As much as the other issues of Season 2 of The Last of Us have pretty much dominated the majority of discourse surrounding the series, I wanted to discuss more about one major change made by the HBO adaptation that, in my opinion, proves to be one of its worst mistakes it made yet. And no, it's not just Bella Ramsey's portrayal as Ellie. No, it's not that shoehorned flashback of Joel's dad who never existed. And it's not even that weird scene with Josh Peck. But rather, the mistake I want to discuss in this video is the one related to one integral character in this story, and that is none other than Abby herself. To better understand what I mean by this is I separated this video into two parts where I'll talk about the original video game first and the show second soon afterwards. So with that being said, let's get on with the video. Now, the first Last of Us is one of my favorite games of all time. The character writing, especially with the relationship of Joel and Ellie, is among the very best I've seen in any video game, and although the sequel wasn't as consistent to me, I still appreciated the ambition it had in framing the characters and the themes of the first game in another light. Specifically, if the first game was defined by the growing father daughter relationship between Joel and Ellie, its sequel is defined by its absence. Joel facing the consequences of his actions through the golfing hands of Abby has been a very divisive topic amongst the fandom, as the two sides would argue that it's either a cheap attempt at a lackluster revenge story or an actual emotionally and thematically relevant narrative. Now, although I do understand the complaints and criticism regarding Joel's death and Ellie's quest for revenge, I for one am on the latter side that considers it a pretty effective narrative. Let me explain. In one of the very best videos I've ever watched about The Last of Us Part 2 by GoatJesus, which I highly recommend watching, is that he explains how intentful the gameplay is with the narrative. Meaning, where even with the players not being able to connect to the game's story and characters, particularly with Abby, it's still done on purpose rather than being a case of bad writing. Neil Druckmann explained in one of his interviews that one of the main themes of The Last of Us is tribalism, how we ostracize and dehumanize others if they don't belong in our own personal circles or communities. And the game explicitly showcases this theme through the dual intersecting narrative between Ellie and Abby, where the player is shown the two sides of this story. Obviously, at first the player will naturally empathize with Ellie more and be in sync with her want for revenge, as thanks to the first game we know who Joel and Ellie are. We know their struggles, their fears, and the bond they had with each other, which makes them almost like people we actually know. In contrast, when we're introduced to Abby, we have little to no information on her motivations and why she wants to kill Joel. Only when we get to play as her later on in the game are we then shown more of her backstory, and based on some player reactions, they basically couldn't give a shit about these gameplay sections. But to me, these contentious sections were essential as they add to the game's theses on how much you, the player, can empathize with others who've wronged you after knowing their reasons. This meshing of gameplay and narrative was honestly my favorite aspect of The Last of Us 2, and why I think the deviation made in the HBO adaptation is one of the worst mistakes in the show. The second season of The Last of Us presents one of the biggest changes, and in my opinion, one of its worst in its very first episode, and it's this scene. This scene, which was not in the video game at all, where it has Abby and her friends mourning the death of the Firefly members Joel killed in the first season to rescue Ellie. Now, to some viewers, this may not be that big of an issue, and in fact, to some, it might even be considered an improvement in the manner of making Abby more of a sympathetic character from the start. But that change right there completely goes against the intent of the video game, as now, even before Abby bonks Joel with a golf club, there's now a reason why we'd understand why she did this in the first place. That challenge of empathy the game presented is no longer as potent, as Abby is no longer a stranger to the viewer, and the show even doubles down on this as not only do we get to see her motivations, her hospital flashback, but also in her exposition filled monologue where she prattles on how much of a piece of shit Joel is, as if the audience didn't already get it. But now you may say, oh, whatever, it's just one change. We still want Ellie to kill Abby for inverting Joel's face in. Which is true for some, but to me, it's not really the same anymore, as this change presents structural ramifications throughout the rest of the series that do turn it into a more standard revenge story. What I mean by this is that when compared to the video game, where these scenes were supposed to be the catalyst behind the player and Ellie's vengeful warpath, they no longer serve the same purpose as in the show. The connection we have with HBO Ellie is entirely different, meaning that we, the viewers, no longer feel in tune with Ellie, as from early on, we already know things about Abby that she doesn't. We no longer see things solely from her perspective. We no longer feel the same grief for Joel that, she only had like what, 5 minutes? Which ultimately makes us no longer feel her rage and her downward spiral that serves as the moral of this story about revenge and forgiveness. Overall, it just makes the show a far less interesting exploration of these themes, and coupled with the show's lackluster direction and dialogue, it definitely doesn't help the overall adaptation. But anyway, all in all though, I'm just gonna end this video by saying that I no longer have that much high expectations for the TV series. I'm still gonna watch it as I did think the first season was pretty good. The set design remains amazing. Some of the cast members at least were doing the best they could do with the piss take of a script that they were given, specifically with Caitlin Dever as Abby. Also, the next season seems to be replicating the dual narrative of the game, so we're gonna switch over to her perspective, but even then, like I said, it still wouldn't be the same thing, as we already know who Abby is at this point. But with that being said, that's about it. Many thanks for watching.